We're probably running out of time with you because you said you had a hard stop. So let's ask the $1,000,000 question. Tell us about SBF. Like, who is this character?
When did you first suspect?
Yeah, what's your read on the psychology
that this wasn't legit?
Do you think that it was his altruistic intent?
I have to say, I did not see this coming. Like he appeared to me to be a very bright, credible, competent person, perhaps a bit young, perhaps, a bit reckless at times, but not unethical and not committing fraud. I definitely did not see that. If I look back to see, were there any warning signs that I should have thought twice about it? One of the things I noticed was that in 2021, Coinbase had a good year. We did $7 billion in revenue, $4 billion of positive EBITDA. We became public as a company. At that time, FTX did about $1 billion in revenue. And I knew how much money we had for our venture budget and just like different investments we wanted to make. And I knew their revenue. And I had to scratch my head a bunch of times. And I was like, where is this guy getting all this liquidity? Because he was like buying 9% of Robinhood. He was putting like $1 billion into this. He was donating to all these politicians. And I was like, it did not make sense to me where he was getting all this cash. People just kept telling me, oh, his market maker Alameda is just printing cash. And I was like, okay, I guess, it seems like a conflict of interest to own an exchange and a market maker. That's why we haven't done it, but more power to him, I guess. And so I was surprised. I didn't speak up. I can't explain the psychology of it at this point, whether he's a pathological liar or if he's started off good and somehow under the pressure of this whole thing went bad. But the minute you can go watch the interviews, he's lying to people about why he's bailing out Voyager and BlockFi and these, and he knew at that time that most likely he knew at that time that they were not solvent. Alameda was not solvent, and so that's where he crossed a major line in my book.
And we see it time and time again. Elizabeth Holmes, Bernie Madoff. I mean, once the lie gets too big, you can't get out of it anymore. If that's the case, really incredible.
And the most important thing at this point, Brian, is that the United States makes a decision on, do we want to be in crypto? Do we want to have a say in this and create a regulatory framework that entrepreneurs like yourself can deal with? That is the most important thing to happen in the next year. But you're saying the SEC is not motivated. I guess, why are they not motivated? They're just CYA.
No, they're motivated now. This is a political issue now. So
but let's hear Brian's answers here. What do you think,
let's find out who did SBF give all this money to? Because he was touted as one of the future biggest donors to the Democratic Party. If you want signals, I would say there were some pretty big signals here. Number one, he said he's going to donate $1 billion to the Democratic Party. And he kept touting this like effective altruism, whatever, the saving the world stuff. Now, why do you need to do that unless you're reputation laundering and trying to buy political protection? Come on.
Okay.
You don't think that was a little bit of a signal?
Right. I'll tell you an even more explicit signal. He pitched us in that $17 billion round, and I did a Zoom with him. And after the Zoom, I'm like, this doesn't make much sense, but I'll have my team do some work. We did some work and we sent him a 2-page deck. And we said, here are our recommendations for taking the next step. One was the formation of a board. The second was the creation of dual class stock. The third was some reps and warranties around affiliated transactions and related party transactions. And the person that worked there called us back and literally, I'm not kidding you, said, go fuck yourself. Was quote unquote the response to us. We're like, okay. So that was the easy decision, but
message received.
Message received, but I still thought, okay, I'll just put that in the bucket of these guys are unbelievably arrogant and smug. But Brian, I thought what you thought, which is maybe it's because they've created some money-making machine in the Bahamas, and so they have that level of confidence. But then to see this thing to the extent of which is now, we're only scratching the surface, guys. We're going to find out stuff every day. I just want to say the second uncomfortable thing out loud, which is there was a lot of venture firms in Silicon Valley in this period of both not doing any work or diligence who also took the extra step and actually created classes and would teach teams how to create these tokens. Okay, and those artifacts, those video links and artifacts are sometimes on their website. They're still on YouTube. They're inside of Twitter. And what these folks would do, and we talked about this, the game that they played was they would get a team, they would create a token, they would also buy equity at some crazy valuation. The equity was locked up, but the tokens were not. And then they would put them on an exchange and sell them to unsuspecting people, and they would be able to dump these tokens. And if you look inside of that trend, what you're going to see, and Brian just mentioned this, those were the sale of securities, except it was done in a completely unregulated way. So if the SEC is really, and the DOJ is really going to take this FTT token issue seriously and what happened to FTX, they're going to start to look at a bunch of other tokens and token sales, and you're going to end up looking at some very well-known venture firms inside of Silicon Valley.
This is going to be super gnarly, and we talked about it before on this pod. There are people who knew better. So you get a bunch of kids who are living in the Bahamas in a house, and they're, winging this thing. That's one level of responsibility, and they'll go to jail. But when we talk about venture capitalists, capital allocators who've been at it for decades, to Chamath's point, and they're teaching people how to do this, and they're hiring attorneys and creating offshore Panama, BVI, whatever, places to put these coins, and then teaching people how to do it and then flipping them potentially. We're just peeling back the onion on this. I have a feeling that this is going to be the turning point in all of this.
That token, guys, let's be honest, is not the only token that has been engineered by Silicon Valley venture firms. And it is also not the only token that's gone to zero that was engineered by Silicon Valley venture firms.
Well, I mean, who knows engineered by, but yeah, adjacent to at the very least.
No, Jason, there's videos today on some of the most well-known venture firm sites on how to do this.